Hello and welcome back to the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. On today's episode, we have a super special guest. I'm pumped for this one for a multitude of reasons. We haven't known each other very long. I got to meet your brother first, Brad, but I'm really excited for this one, especially a one-on-one. I see a lot of different podcasts where both of you guys are on it, but I'm really excited that this podcast will have the opportunity to talk to you both separately. I think we'll bring everyone together at some point.
That'd be great.
But I think for now, this separate conversation is powerful because while you guys are twins and you have a lot of similarities, you guys also have some differences.
Yeah,
So-
very much so. Yeah, Trip, I appreciate you even having me over here. I know that you told me when Brad was on here, your ratings plummeted, so you had to bring in the heavyweight.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I really appreciate it, man. I've been looking forward to this. In all honesty, been a little bit nervous about it, but I'm ready to roll, man.
Yeah, man. I'm super excited to have you here. And
Thank you.
his name is Chad.
Yes.
So it's Brad and Chad.
Yes, as cheesy as you can get, but
Yeah.
that's what we were named, and we'll go with it, man.
Well, it seems like it's working all right.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.
For sure.
Thank you.
So to give the audience a little bit of context and backstory before we start diving into some things, I was super fortunate. So this year at Thanksgiving, holidays are tough for me, without going into too much crazy detail right off the bat. But holidays have always been an interesting time, especially since I kind of started to change my life. I haven't, what they used to represent for me, full transparency, is I would fly home for the holidays. What that looked like is I would start drinking in the airport. My drug dealer would pick me up at the airport at home. I'd show up to whatever event we had, 2-3 days strung out, and usually go down in the basement, not interact with anyone, that sort of thing. So my holidays were dark for a long time.
No kidding. Wow. Okay.
And so when I started to change my life, I started to isolate for the holidays. I was like, I'm going to just be where I'm at and just be by myself. And that created some dark space too, but that's kind of how I dealt with it. I'd flown my mom in for a couple holidays, but I hadn't been home and I hadn't celebrated with anybody. And this year that all changed because there's two things that happened. And for me, my faith has continued to grow. I struggled with it forever, and we can get into that in a little bit, but
Sure.
what occurred was Brad, your brother, was essentially like, "What are you doing for Thanksgiving, man?" And I was like, probably nothing, like I'll probably just stay at home, keep it chill, probably go for a crazy run or a workout. And he's like, "Man, why don't you come spend Thanksgiving with my family and I?" He's like, "It'd mean the world to me, and I'd love to, introduce you to my family." And my instant reaction to that was like, we'll see, which usually for me means like, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I got off that conversation and I called the girl that I'm seeing, who's changed my life in a million different ways. And I was like, she's like, "What are you going to do for Thanksgiving? I wish you wouldn't be at home alone." And I was like, "Well, Brad just asked me to come and spend it with his family. But, I don't want to intrude. Like, that's his family. I don't want to, I don't want to be in their space and make anyone uncomfortable." And she just goes, she's like, "I'm going to be very disappointed in you if you don't go."
Oh, really?
That's how she hit it. And I was like, shit, well, I don't want her to be disappointed in me, right? So I hit
I'm doing
Brad.
this for her.
Yeah. So I hit Brad back and I was like, "Hey man, I'll come through. Like, just let me know what you need from me. Do I need to bring anything? Whatever." And he's like, "You don't need a thing. Here's the address. Show up anytime between this time and this time.
Yeah.
It's all good." So I said, "Okay." And even the day of, so this was the day before, even the day of, I'm like, should I bail? Like, what should I do?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I have that much pressure around holidays.
Yeah.
And either way, greatest decision ever, I end up going. And it gave me a much clearer picture, and a much deeper respect for not just Brad, but you, your brother, your mother, the spouses, the children, everybody. Like, it's the first time in a long time, honestly, probably 20 years, man, for me, that I was with a family, like a family for a holiday.
Trip, I love hearing that. I'll touch on that in two different segments. When Brad asks somebody something, he means it, and so it's not, he doesn't ever do anything if he feels like, or because he feels like he has to. So, as a matter of fact, I think that he is one of the most genuine people that is walking this earth. And as we've all experienced and been blessed with, he's probably the most generous person that I've ever met. So that's one. So for him to ask you, he meant it. He didn't feel pressure. I just want you to know that. Not that you didn't, but whatever. Secondly, our family loved having you there. It's just cool. You know, it, I love my family. I think that everybody knows that have listened to any of the other podcasts we've done. I love them to death. And the one person I wish that you would have been able to meet is our grandma, who was 100% the rock of our family. And she's just walked the walk, talked the talk. But what she put in place over the years has 100% spread throughout. I just want to say you were 100% welcome there. We were glad to have you. And it was a good time, man. And the food was amazing.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
The food, I got to ask.
Yeah, please.
Where did all that food, was it made? Where did it come from? Like, I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So my mom's an amazing cook. She cooked most of it. My younger brother actually went to culinary school.
Oh, wow.
And he's been an amazing cook as well. And when they get together, I mean, that's, Brad has discipline when it comes to food. I don't. And that's probably why he looks like Superman and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, times like that, it's when everybody's there, Mom and Wes are cooking, I'm all in, buddy. Like, if Brad could have showed up with Satan, I'm like, I don't care. You sit in the corner, man. I'm hitting the food. So we honestly, we were glad to have you, man. It was a good time this year.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key takeaways for me was kind of seeing that family dynamic and understanding that it still exists.
Oh man, good.
Because for me, and I love my mom to death. I'm going to go home and see her for Christmas. But our family is fractured in a million different ways.
I understand.
And it's because of resentment over the years and people's not willing to change their behaviors or be open-minded. And there's a million reasons. But to be able to be in a scenario that kind of recreated this family dynamic being possible, in my mind, was really fulfilling.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really cool that I took away from it was Brad had told me beforehand, he's like, hey, my brother Chad listened to my podcast with you and he wants the opportunity just to chat, man. If you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, no doubt. Like, I would love that. We got to have a conversation after everyone kind of finished eating and had left the table. And I walked away from that feeling inspired for two reasons. One, and we'll get into it as we progress through this conversation. Yeah. Your willingness to be vulnerable around some of like your life, not just past, not just future, but present, and to be open about it and to be able to have a conversation about it in an eloquent manner inspired me. Right. It wasn't broken in any way. It was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm working through. This is how it's been, and so I admire that. The second part that I admired is while we were having that conversation, Brad came back in and sat down and he started telling us the story about this mind-boggling training experience that he went on.
Kikoro?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But to see, like, I watched you love him through your presence when he was talking about it. I could see your pride in him. And man, that inspired the shit out of me.
No kidding.
I was like, that's love right there. That guy loves his brother.
Buddy, I do. I love both of my brothers. Brad is the only person that I've been blessed with to have a male influence that I look up to. I am 9 minutes older. I just have to throw that out there. So whatever. But he's a very unique and special human being. And I get that. I see it. And I am proud of him. Brad walks the walk, man. And I said this, and I think I made a post about this. He's, as you know, he's in ridiculous shape. And I'm bringing this up for a reason. I like to rag on him, but he's put in the work. Like, we're the exact physical definition of what choices in life can do. Brad has always been disciplined. He's always put in the work. He's had the will to put a plate of food down, to put a drink down, which I'm sure we're about to get into. He's had the will to stick with the program. And everybody looks at me and there's like, well, you're married, you have a kid, you don't have time. I have the time. Brad, we have the same time. We all have the same time in a day.
Mhm.
If it were that important to me, I would put in the time. That's just me saying how I'm more than proud of Brad, man. I'm blessed to have him as my twin brother, blessed to have him as a mentor and a leader. He's always been a leader, always. When we worked in the oil fields, he ended up being my boss for a certain stint, and I shut up and listened, because it's because I trust him.
Mhm.
Same thing when in business, when I've been in the hot seat in our partnership before with the bars. And this goes for Jason also. They're two people that are salt of the earth. And when salt of the earth people tell me something, I shut up and listen. They're not making things up. They're right. And so anyway, that's back to, yeah, I do. And I am proud of his Kokoro experience. I couldn't do it, but I'm proud, and I would listen all day long to those stories, man.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an incredible individual.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Through and through. I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, how he shows up, his generosity, which you mentioned. I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like it.
Me either. And that's him. It's funny because so many people say so many things about him, and it's typically good. The people that don't know him like to throw shade at him for whatever reason, which is kind of funny, but that's Brad. And again, I look up to him. Just, my younger brother too. I mean, my younger brother right now has been my hero for a long time, long story, but he's come out ahead in some seemingly insurmountable obstacles. But I look at what he's done as well, and it's amazing. So I'm blessed to have the brothers that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. To take it all the way back, because, I was able to have a conversation with Brad around childhood stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously you're well aware of his story.
Absolutely.
Is yours a mirror of that as a child, or did you guys have different experiences?
No, it's a mirror.
Okay.
Yeah, and we all have things. We all have things, it was rocky at best, we had some good times, we had some bad times. I know one thing, neither one of us use that as a crutch, I do want to say publicly, because I don't want anyone to think that my mom dropped the ball. My mom was in survival mode, man. I mean, when she's, and I hope this doesn't offend her, but she wasn't formally educated. I'm not formally educated. For a single woman, especially back then, to not have a formal education, you're grasping, man. You're clawing, you're fighting, you're doing whatever you can. And to be raising 3 boys who eat and fight, all of those things, fight each other.
Yeah.
But, I can't imagine, man. And, you're in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, a lot of things get looked over. A lot of things get, you do things out of desperation. I've been there, and it's, yes, it mirrors Brad's. And frankly, Trip, man, I'm glad. I look back now, and Brad and I have literally looked at each other in the face and said, we're either breaking the cycle, we're not going to repeat it, we're going to make something on our own, and that's just what we did. And so, yeah, I don't regret it, man. I'm glad that it made me who I am today. And I'll tell you this, and I won't be
Good.
my wife told me not to say I won't be long-winded, and I just said it, but it really taught me what I didn't want to do. And frankly, and this isn't a shot at my parents, at my mom at least, it taught me the type of parent that I was going to be, no exceptions. And I'm blessed for those lessons.
Mm-hmm. I have a very similar connection.
Yeah.
My willpower, I think, is derived directly from my mother.
Interesting.
Like, once you get older, when you're a kid, you don't quite get it.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure I fully understand it now, because I'm not a parent yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I have enough awareness to look at how she showed up and the things she was willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I can't quit. What are you talking about? Like, you want me to quit on something? She was the perfect example of, like, no quit.
Yeah.
Quick example. We moved around a bit after my dad left, trying to find,
How old were you, if you don't mind, at this time? Do you remember it?
Yeah. So he left around 5, and my brother left about a year after that. We had different dads.
Okay.
So it was just me and my mom.
Okay.
And we moved from the house that we lived in as a family. We went about 45 minutes away. Then we moved back to town. Then we moved across town. Long story short, my mom was just trying to find the best possible situation for me. It didn't even have anything to do with her. And she was working like crazy, different jobs. She found some secure footing with a job. And even on top of that, I remember watching her start this eBay hustle.
Oh, wow.
She's like, okay, I'm going to work these hours. My son's going to be at every ball practice, whatever he needs. We're going to get him anywhere he's got to go across town. I want him to have those experiences. And in order to provide for those too, I'm going to do this additional thing. And a lot of people don't know this, but my first few years of college, I was a preferred walk-on. I wasn't a full ride athlete until towards the end of my career. My mom was paying for my school, like through her own means the whole time. And a lot of it was through eBay, that hustle. Like my room when I left turned into her eBay room.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I mean, it was like, she's like a drug dealer for eBay. And she hears me, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like she would go and sell something and flip it and keep buying more and flip it, And so she found a lot of success in that, but she was just a grinder is my point.
Yeah.
And with that though, to your point comes, in reflection, a lot of opportunities where it was like, maybe she didn't say or do the right thing based off what we know now. But in that moment, she was doing everything, and with everything she had. And so I have nothing but gratitude for that. And I think that's where I get my willpower.
No kidding. And it's funny you just said what you said, because and I'm not saying that you thought any other way, but who are we to say what's right to be said at that time?
Right.
Who are we? Like,
Right.
And again, I'm blessed that we had that struggle. I will say we were taught at an early age that if you want something, you go and get it. I mean, honestly, Trip, the money just was not there. And she did work, obviously. She worked and I wrote her a letter one time, talking about her work ethic, and I saw how hard she worked, but even with all of that, the money just wasn't there, and so it taught us that if you want something, you go and get it. There's no one's coming to save us, man. No one's coming to save us. And, frankly, I wish I would have, kept a little bit of that willpower.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into that, in a minute, but, yeah, I feel you, man. I understand exactly what you're saying.
It's interesting too. And hopefully one day we'll get the opportunity to meet my mom too.
Absolutely.
But I think you'll see a lot the same.
Oh, really?
So when I was at Thanksgiving dinner,
Yeah.
she came off as very calm, very composed. Your mother did.
Mhm.
Very just in her frame, right? She's good. My mom's the same way.
Interesting. Yeah.
But what I know about that type of person and woman specifically is they will go to hell and back for anyone around them.
Damn right. Yeah.
They don't have to talk about it. There's no show. There's no flash. It's just like, I'm here if you need me kind of thing.
It's funny. We were talking over there, and we both said, so I'll say it publicly so we get points from everybody, but I think we both agree that we feel that women are both mentally and physically stronger than men. And maybe that's because we were raised by single women. I know at least pain tolerance, man. I turn into a baby if I start, sniffing a little bit. My wife could have the flu and COVID at the same time, and she's out running 6 miles. So it's, I get it. And I'm glad that amount of respect derived from those times, I really am.
So to transition from early childhood,
Sure.
you talk about formal education.
Mm-hmm.
Was there high school diploma? Did you get all the way through high school?
I did.
Okay.
Barely. I'm not a school guy.
Yeah.
I've told my daughter this, so I'm not going to hide behind it. I was always, and I use this against myself and not in the right way, I was always arrogant enough to think that I was just going to work for myself. I don't like rules. It's not that I'm this hellbreaker or, I'm not one of those guys, but I just don't like rules. I don't like living off somebody else's agenda and them telling me what I'm going to do. I've just always been that way. And so school, and maybe there was some laziness. I mean, I've got to be honest, maybe there's some laziness at that time, but I graduated high school. I attended, I was enrolled in Texas State, Southwest Texas at the time. And I lasted one semester, and that was it, that was it. So a little bit of college, more for the college experience than the education.
I got you.
Yeah.
in and around that time, just to start to build both parts of the story.
Yeah, please.
When did like, as far as partying, having fun, having a good
Great
time,
question.
when was it around this time that started to start, begin?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I started drinking early,
Yeah.
and a heavy drinker. And it's funny, man, because looking back now, I'd be mortified if my daughter, or if I had a son, whatever, if they were drinking like we were all drinking. We had a big group of friends that we drank a lot.
Mhm.
And, my daughter's a sophomore now. She's 16. She's getting into real life experiences. And yeah, we drank a lot, man. We started experimenting with a little bit of drugs, but not much. I mean, I'm going to sound like the typical guy that says, yeah, it wasn't that bad because whatever, but never anything hard in high school at all. But still, we were. I mean, on the weekends, it was nothing. We'd scrounge our money together. We get a case of beer. We go out to somebody's deer lease. We were in East Texas, and plus we threw some pretty good parties. But yeah, I started drinking pretty heavy, and it just lasted from there.
Yeah, so similar. I think about 13 was my first drink.
Was it really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from
Okay.
from my dad, who I've told you about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then all through high school, it was the same story.
Yeah.
I worked to make enough money to spend on booze.
Yeah.
And we threw down all through high school. But at the time, you're like, man, everyone's doing it, right?
This is what you do. Yeah, exactly.
There's not a problem here.
Exactly.
We're good. Like,
Yep.
everything's fine. And then, getting into college,
funny.
those experiences shift. And, but either way, back to your story. So one semester, and then where do you go after that semester at Southwest Texas or Texas State?
Yeah. So in our town, we were in a small town, Livingston, Texas, and the opportunity wasn't there, if that makes sense. So there were two things that you did. I heard Brad say this on another podcast, so pardon me if you heard this, but there was the electric company that a lot of people went to work for, very respectable job, and then the oil company, Shell Oil. Brad and I both went to Shell Oil, and we were surveyors for a while. And then the man who was our boss there started his own company, and we ended up working in the oil fields for a while. I'll say I always wanted to own a bar, and so I left that to start making that happen. Came back. That's when Brad was my boss, by the way, in the oil fields. Came back and then started going the bar route. But yes, we went into the oil industry and just low level, and it was called stomping jugs, and surveying is exactly what we did.
I got you. That gives me an interesting question for you.
Yeah, please.
What was it about the bar scene that made you want to own a bar?
Man, Trip, I've been asked this before. I love it. And it's ever since high school, I wanted to own a bar. I don't know what it was. I like being around people, or I did. I like taking care of people. I like that if you're in my house, I want you to feel like you're at home. And there's just something about that industry that I just liked. And frankly, it just started with just wanting to be a bartender. It's just that action, I don't know. I was obsessed, man. I mean, I was obsessed with doing that. It's what I did. And the oil fields are just a means to an end, so to speak. I didn't save any of my money from there. That was the plan.
Right.
But ironically, I spent it in bars. So those bar owners were happy when we would come in. But man, I was just obsessed by it. I don't know what it was. It's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And it's people, when I look back on my journey, though, a lot of people expect me to say it was, my party years were some of the worst of my life. And there were some bad times, but there was also a lot of really awesome fun,
Absolutely.
like in bars and around people.
Yeah.
And I think it really didn't get super dark for me until that transpired into more of an isolation, drinking alone, drinking in the morning,
Yes.
doing drugs throughout the course of the day, and then maybe making it to the bar.
Yeah.
Right. But when it was social, being around other people, man, I enjoyed that. I had a good time at a lot of these bars. So I can understand why it would be like something you want to be involved with.
Trip, if you don't, when was that transition for you, if you don't mind? When did you, and did you know, did it kind of hit you like, wait a minute, I've crossed the line here, or was it gradual, or when was that transition?
So I can think of 2 or 3 occasions where it was like, oh shit,
Okay.
maybe, like kind of thought. In college, So if you're not part of the 2 deep on the roster, you don't travel.
Okay.
And so my roommates traveled first 2 years. I didn't.
Okay.
And I would go on Saturdays before our games and get someone to pick me up a case of beer at like 10 a.m., 9 a.m. And I would just pregame and drink all day.
Would you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a couple times, some of the other non-travel guys, we went to a couple of the games that were close enough. And like there's stories of me like passed out on hoods of trucks in the tailgate, and, like, passing out during the game and going down in the locker room hammered after the game to be around teammates and stuff. Like, so there was a couple moments in there where I was like, this might not
What's
be
going
good.
on, kind of. Okay.
But I was just like, I'm in college, man. I'm living this dream. Like, this is incredible. So I kind of justified it. I don't think it really, really hit me until it got to the point where I was not just drinking, but I brought cocaine into the picture.
Okay.
And I would find myself like wanting to be around people. And then I'd get around people and I'd get the drugs and I'd be like, man, I'm just going to go home and drink and do drugs at my coffee table by myself. And the next thing you know, the sun's coming up and I'm still there by myself. And it's kind of like, this probably isn't good.
Yeah.
And the only thing I want to do is keep partying. And there's no one around.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, it's not adding up anymore. This isn't social. This isn't me meeting people, networking, having fun. This is just me doing something like a means to an end, if you will.
And how old were you this time again?
25.
25?
Yeah,
Okay.
about 25.
Okay.
And from 25 to 30, it looked a lot like that.
Really? So it lasted about 5 years of you're in it.
Yeah.
You're deep in it. Okay.
Yeah. And so but again, it's like I was two people. And I don't know if you've had this experience. Like, professionally, I was growing in my career. I was successful. I was able to lead my team. And 95% of the time I showed up as an ace. But as soon as I had the opportunity to set that down for a 2-3 day period, it was busted loose. I mean, balls to the wall. So much so, like, by the time Monday rolled back around, I'd have to stop everything cold turkey. So Monday, Tuesday, I'm a wreck, right? I'm just like, but I have to be
irritable,
that way.
achy. I get it.
Delusional to an extent. Like, you're like, man, I can't think for shit. Like, my brain's gone.
Yeah.
And about Wednesday, that clarity would start to turn the page. And because Monday and Tuesday, I'm never drinking or doing drugs again. Wednesday, I start to get a little clarity. And I'm like, yeah, but like, this feels good. I don't want to mess it up. By Thursday afternoon, usually I was like, guys want to get some drinks after work. Cool, man. Like, I'm good with that. I
I'll
can
have
go.
a couple,
Next thing I know, it's Monday again.
Yeah.
And so that was my cycle. And, I deferred it for a long time because from a public perspective, everything that I'd been taught or known is like, you can't be an alcoholic unless you drink all day, every day. You can't be a drug addict unless you use all day, every day. That's a lie. And so once someone told me that, I still deferred it, right? Because they're like, if you have more than X amount of drinks when you drink, like, you have a problem or, whatever. And I'm like, that's kind of a bogus number because that number doesn't apply to me, right? And I would find all these different ways, but eventually it got to the point for me where it was like the comeback, if you will, like after the drunk or after the high, wasn't manageable anymore. Like, I couldn't manage it without more drinking or more drugs.
Absolutely.
And like the anxiety, the depression, everything, the whirlwind that would come and the shame, all these things, I couldn't deal with that anymore. And I knew it was either continue on the path that I'm on, and I knew how that was going to end, or find a way to start climbing out of this hole. And so, I chose life in my eyes, right? I was like, I just want to live. And I was like, maybe, and it clicked really quick for me. It was like, it's not about me. It's not, we're talking to myself. It's not about you in the mirror.
Right.
It was somebody else might need an opportunity to climb out of that same hole. Like, what if I can show them that way?
No kidding.
And so that's why I pushed everything to the max, like physically, mentally, emotionally, lost 100 pounds, quit my career, started a business, moved across the country. It was all for that reason, because I wanted to show people, like, it doesn't matter how far you're in that hole. There's a comeback. You just got to work for it.
So was there one thing that happened, or you just made that decision? Was there one night? You know, anything.
Yeah.
Was there something major that took place? Or,
No, so this is
good for
what
you, man. That takes a lot of strength.
so I was arrested
Wow.
4 times,
Okay. Yeah.
all alcohol related.
Sure.
Usually something stupid, right? I should have been arrested 50 times for a million different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that never woke me up though.
Okay.
You know, my mom would be like, "When are you gonna wake up?" You know, as I bail out of jail.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, this cop was a dick," you know?
Not my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just deferred all of it,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
And here's the issue leading into that. The more intelligent you are, I think the harder it is to get out of addiction and alcoholism, because you can justify things in your own head. You can manipulate those around you. You're smart enough to come up with different things
Yeah.
that make it seem okay, or it's not that big of a deal, or I have control, right? That was me. I was always on top of that. Like as I was drinking or using, I'd be thinking of a way I was going to explain myself the next day.
So you were aware of the manipulation, yet you justified it in a roundabout way,
Yeah.
I guess? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so but while that was happening, again, nothing financial woke me up. Legal troubles didn't wake me up. Losing friends and family didn't wake me up. What woke me up was the night of my 30th birthday. I had a couple buddies in town, and one was playing for the Titans. The other one was in medical sales, really successful. They're in the kitchen talking about buying businesses, building businesses, investing, family. I'm in the living room sitting on the couch trying to find Coke.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was this moment of like, dude, what are you doing? And I had this pull to go in the bathroom. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. And I didn't have to pee or anything like that. But I went. I got up, I went in the bathroom. It was right before midnight. And I looked in the mirror for the first time. And it wasn't like looking at, you know, how my body looked or my hair or my clothes. I looked into my own eyes, like deep, like looked through myself. And excuse my French, but I didn't know what the fuck I was looking at. I was like, this ain't it.
Yeah.
This is not why my mom did what she did.
Wow.
And it was that moment in the mirror, those last 4 months leading up to that point, I was suicidal. You know, the thoughts were there all the time.
Yeah.
I knew how I'd do it, where I would do it. And it was this moment that I didn't know where else to turn, man. And my stepdad planted this seed in me when I was real young. He's like, if you ever know you're in a situation you don't know what to do, he's like, just pray about it, man. And I didn't know what to do in that moment. And so I prayed. And I tell this part of the story because prayer doesn't have to look like Joel Osteen on TV, right? And my God doesn't have to look like your God and all these different things. Like, you just have to understand that you're not him.
Yeah.
And so all I said out loud was, I'm ready if you're ready. That's it. And I made a deal with God right there in the mirror. I was like, I won't die of suicide, alcohol, or drugs, but I'm going to push everything else to the absolute max, physically, mentally, emotionally, professionally. Take me when you're ready. I'm at peace with it. I'm going to die an honorable death. You know, and
That's a very powerful statement or commitment. Wow.
so I walked out of that bathroom, and it was almost like I was testing God for a while, to be honest with you. I was like, yeah, you can kill me. Go ahead. Like, I'll push further than you think.
Yeah.
But that got me really far. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we're capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
100%. Yeah.
And so that's how my story started. That was my last night drinking and using, period.
Right.
So it wasn't this big major fallout. Nothing really bad happened. And that's why I say, like, your bottom is when you decide it's your bottom. When you decide this is as low as I'm going,
Right.
regardless of what anyone else thinks, you make that decision. This is it. I only want to go up from here, even if it's hard as hell and it kills me, but I don't want to be here anymore. That's rock bottom in my eyes.
So did you have pretty strong cravings like for months after? Do you still, if you don't mind me asking,
Great
do you
question.
still get cravings now?
No.
Interesting. Really?
So the way I approached it, and this wasn't anything brilliant that I came up with
Right.
by any stretch, but I'd made that promise in the mirror that I told you about. I went to bed that night. I woke up the next morning, and I'd had a lot of day ones, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'd relapsed. I can't tell you how many times.
Really?
Because I'd be convinced I'm quitting, and then I'd make it a few days or a week,
Yep.
2 weeks, and then it was like, I'm gone.
Yep.
I can handle this shit. It always
I'm
ended,
only going to do it tonight.
Yeah.
Man,
it always
we
ended-
may have even mentioned this on Thanksgiving or at Thanksgiving that there's always the rules.
Yeah.
You know, oh, okay, date night with my wife.
Yeah.
vacation,
Right.
whatever it may be, you know, so-and-so's wedding. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Another spiral for another 6 weeks.
Yeah. It never ends. It never ends right.
Yeah.
And for me, every time I made that deal with myself, it got worse on some level. And so I got this idea from this old timer, this guy. He's like, next time you want to, you know, tear it off and tie one on, he's like, just play the tape forward, bro. He's like, don't think about that night. Think about 5 weeks from now when you pick your head up out of the dirt. Think about that feeling. And then ask yourself, is tonight really worth that, or should I just take my ass to bed?
Right.
So when I woke up that next morning, day one, I was like, all right, if I really want to do this, it really has to be different. Plus, I felt like I'd made that deal with God. He was going to kill my ass if I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I put running shoes on. I was 312 pounds. I was like, I'm going to run a mile.
Were you really 312?
Yeah, 312.
Wow. Congrats on losing the weight, man.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
That was a crazy run too. And part of it was me trying to kill myself.
Well, I know you're an overachiever if you're 312 and doing cocaine, because that's usually those two don't work. Usually you
100%.
lose a lot of weight. Wow.
Yeah, and it was because I couldn't use Coke Monday through Thursday. So how I dealt with my feelings, my emotions, my everything Monday through Thursday is I ate it.
Yep.
I ate them.
Wow.
It was like 8,000 calories a day.
Wow.
So I was miserable, but that misery was comfort for me because it was familiar. And so, man, yeah, that's how all the weight got put on.
Yeah.
But I went and ran this mile. It took me 16 minutes and 37 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Former D1 athlete, can't even run a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Ran, I'm like, oh, this ain't good. But I had a benchmark, man. And in that benchmark, I decided, like, okay, this can't just be physical for me. I need to grow mentally and emotionally too.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to learn about myself. And so they told me go to 30 meetings in 30 days. And I was like, man, fuck that. I'll do 90 meetings in 30 days. I'll do 3 a day if that's what it takes. Well, 30 days go by. First time I ever put 30 days together from the time I was 13 to 30.
30 sober days.
30 sober days.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
I hit that 30-day mark and I was like, lost a little bit of weight. I had a little different level of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it clicked. I was like, I only feel this way because I'm not drinking and using. That's the only reason I feel this good.
Yeah.
And then it clicked for me on those Wednesdays when I'd start to get a little clarity. The only reason I felt that little bit of clarity is because I hadn't drank or used in 2 days. So I started to put those pieces together of like, every time you feel like shit, it's at the end of this, right? It might feel good in it. You have some good times, but at the end of it is shit.
Man, that is spot on.
So I connected with that and I was like, all right, well, I did 30 days. Let's see what happens. Well, like 15 days after that, I quit my career, moved to Texas, didn't have any money, no business. I had no business doing any of that.
Yeah.
But when you're in that mode of like, honestly, survival mode, like scratch and claw, you'll do anything. You can literally do anything. We're crazy resilient as humans.
Absolutely.
But
yes, we are.
But for me, I had to be put in a position where I had to crawl out of the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, put me back against the wall, put all the beasts in front of me, and like let me go to work. And I needed that. And so I became obsessed with the meetings, even though I hated them, bro. And I'm not involved in a 12-step program now. But if anybody comes to me and they want to get sober, that's the first thing I go over here.
Do you go to meetings now? I know you're
No.
not involved in a program, but do you ever just randomly?
If someone asks me, I'll go.
Oh, cool.
If someone says, hey, will you join me? I'm there.
Oh, really?
If someone wants, they're picking up a chip and they want me, I'm there. But I don't go out of my way to go anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, this is probably the addict in me. I didn't want that to be my whole life, man. Because I didn't feel like that is me through and through. I understand I have an issue or a thing, but like, I didn't want to spend my whole life sitting in those rooms talking about the same shit, because I think it's honestly gets to a point where it beats you down more than it lifts you up. You got to walk in somewhere every day. And depending on how you hear, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. For some of us, it feels like saying, hey, my name's Trip, I'm a piece of shit. And I got tired of saying that.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to spin the addict word and alcoholic word to this gift, right? Because I look at what that same wiring has given me outside of drugs and alcohol. From a business perspective, it's created success.
Sure.
From a fitness perspective, it's created success. From a relationship perspective, it's created success. Talk about Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, they're addicts. They just chose basketball.
Absolutely.
And so I started viewing it that way. And I think I only was able to do that once I got out of the rooms, because I needed to know it wasn't this horrible thing. And so, yeah, man, it was big for me early on, because I worked the program, I worked the steps I needed to work. So I was in the program for 9 months. And in those 9 months, that's 270 days, I went to 810 meetings.
Did you really?
Yeah, like obsessed. And I thought about it, and I'm like, there's people that went to like 1 meeting a week. I started doing the math in my head. That's something else I shouldn't do, but I started doing the math in my head, and I'm like, there's people that have been going to meetings for 12, 13 years that don't have the knowledge that I have on this, because I've been to this many in this amount of time.
Right.
I don't need to sit in here anymore. And so I completed my program. I committed to being of service, but my commitment to being of service was going to be outside of the rooms, because what about the guy that doesn't make it in the room?
Exactly.
What about the guy on the corner? He ain't walking in that room. What about the same thing with my faith? I didn't find God in a church pew. I found him in the mirror looking into my soul that night.
Wow.
You know, and I grew up around religion. And honestly, I despised it for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because of what I saw in it.
Sure.
But point being, I wanted to be of service in a different way. And maybe that's my addict in me wanting to be stubborn, and that's great. But I think that that's been created. And so I'm good with it. I'm at peace with it. But that was part of my programming early on that helped me get sober. The fitness thing was, the nutrition piece was. And I also had to learn, for at least an extended amount of time, I couldn't put myself in positions where that was happening.
Where people were drinking and stuff? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
It took a little bit of time.
Did it?
I had to step away.
Yeah. So no going out to dinner, no, whatever it may be in your world.
Right.
You just had to step away, really?
I honestly isolated for, call it 4 or 5 months.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, what did the isolation, I mean, you obviously came out ahead, but for me, isolation is the worst thing that I can do, and it just compounds. And so what did it do to you mentally?
So it gave me a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So in isolation, one of two things can happen. You can either sit there and do nothing and let things spiral, which is exactly what will happen if I go do it today.
Okay.
I will spiral so deep, so quick.
Just bad thoughts, obviously.
Yeah. And they just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in this point of isolation in my life, I was working my ass off. So it was like, if I'm not running, I'm reading. If I'm not reading, I'm working my step program. If I'm not working my step program, I'm in a meeting. If I'm not in a meeting, I'm lifting weights. If I'm not lifting weights, I'm meal prepping to make sure I eat the right things. So like by the time, I can't tell you, it was like I was a child all over again. I would literally pass out on the couch sitting up because I was so tired.
Right.
And I would just wake up, and the minute my eyes opened, I was back in it. And I just kept doing that day by day by day by day. And eventually there was no urges, right? I went to my first bar experience. I went down to Rainy Street, which was bold.
I was about to say, man, you jumped right in.
Yeah. I didn't go to like a restaurant. I went
Yeah.
to Rainy Street on a Sunday football.
Oh, man.
And I drank 13 Topo Chicos because I was like, that habit, it's still habitual. Like you got to have something in your hand. I got to be drinking something. I still had like a $62 bar tab sober.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And, but
freaking bar owners, man.
yeah, they're killing it. But I stayed sober.
Yeah.
And I walked away from that experience, and I was like, shit, we're good. I don't want it anymore. Because that night I got to watch, like, as the people that I went with, and, they're good buddies of mine. I love them to death. But I got to watch them leave there. I know what they went and did after.
Absolutely.
I know they called in the next day.
Yeah.
The next morning I was up at 5 a.m. running.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh yeah, this is why we're in it. So then, not to get too carried away, I know it's getting long-winded.
No, man, please.
Brad talks a lot about this inner beast, battling it and fighting it regularly. I would go on Friday and Saturday nights, and I used to laugh. It was almost like sociopathic. But I would wait until midnight to do my long runs, and I'd go run up and down 6th Street in Rainy with like
on the weekend.
Yeah, like a weighted vest on.
Awesome.
As the people are swarming in the streets, the bars are letting out. Everybody's like, who the fuck is this psycho? And I'm just smiling, chomping at the bit, spitting, growling. I'm like, this is what it is.
Wow.
I don't know. It worked for me, man. Like,
yeah.
People, I know I got some looks and people think I'm nuts, but like, got me sober.
Yeah.
And it got to a point, man, honestly, where it was like, I wonder what life would be like long-term without this thing that I keep bringing back into it. And every time I bring this thing back into my life, things get challenging. My relationships, they're not smooth, man. They're tough. There's frustration. I think I'm disappointing people. I'm letting them down. I didn't want to feel any of that shit anymore, man. I was done with it. And so, yeah, that was kind of it. But I didn't give myself space for an urge.
So now can you go out to a bar now and
Wherever.
and
Yeah.
it just does not bother you at all?
No.
Man, that's admirable. It's also, I have to say, if you're sitting in a room and you're fighting addiction, you're losing weight at the same time, you're trying to become obsessed on something healthy while battling addiction, man, that's a hell of a feat. I know you know this, and it's very, very impressive to say the least, because it's just hard. And whenever you had asked me about doing this podcast, I was very honest with you about the fact I'm not sober right now. I don't want to put out any false flags. I just think that that's impressive, because I think that's my way of telling you I know how hard it can be. It's every bit of a lifestyle. It's every bit of habits. Obviously, it's every bit of everything that comes with it. And it's I'm waiting and needing the day where the bad outweighs the good, and that should have happened a long time ago. And I think I told you this. I'm not not at all. I'm not a mean drunk. I'm not a sloppy drunk. I'm nothing like that. And I've been my own boss for 25 years, and so I've had a lot of crutches. I've had a lot of gimmies, man. And frankly, it's a little bit of complacency, laziness, and lack of discipline and willpower. All of the things that I wish that I had more of. I have it in certain areas of my life, but yeah, man, somebody and I told you I was in rehab, and one of the guys in there said something that it really hit me, man. He said, because I was talking about, I have no discipline, I have no commitment, I have anything, and he was like, and this guy was a pretty hardcore fentanyl addict, and in fact, he came in very rough. But my point is, he said something like, Jed, you've had the same career for 25 years. You've been married for almost 20 years. You have a daughter that you have a good relationship with. Like, I think you're okay on commitment. And at the time I was, and I still am, I guess, but I was also in rehab. I would get up at 5 every day. I'd hit their gym. And he mentioned that also. He's like, you're always in the gym here, whatever. And it's just such an interesting battle. You know what I mean? Like, you said something when you were talking about, we give each other these, oh, it's okay. Excuse me, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But yeah, I wonder what my life would look like completely sober. The longest I've gone, the first time when my wife got pregnant with our daughter, just out of commitment to her and to our future child, I didn't drink at all during that 10 months. Felt great, started running a lot. In fact, Brad, that back then we were working nights all the time still in the bars. And Brad and Jason always talk about this. Jason's our third partner, or our other partner. And I would come in, they would be setting up the bar on a Sunday, I think at Molotov, where we owned it at the time. And I just got off the green belt running, and they're like, you son of a bitch, But I was happy, I was healthy, I was everything. And then I went almost a year after getting out of rehab, and then slipped back, and, it's just I don't know. Frankly, I know we'll get into where all of this is going for each of us, but it's just a battle. I know how hard it is. And I'm just saying, man, attaboy, I guess. That's very admirable for you.
Yeah, no, and I can't take credit for it. I don't.
Who do you give credit to?
I think for me, what helps me the most
Sure.
is giving myself credit, because I've done that,
Fighting your ego, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
because my ego gets me in a lot of shit.
I understand that completely.
And so, I have to battle that thing daily and tell it honestly. Like, people don't like negative self-talk, but for some of us, If we get too high, that's when things start to go south. And so I need to keep myself not low, but mid-grade, right? We start running high octane, I'm going to make some bad decisions.
Man, I think it's Jordan Peterson. You mentioned something like that, that you have to take the highs and the lows with the same amount of emotion, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you have to be cold or dead or whatever in your head, but I agree with that to a certain extent, because when you start celebrating these huge wins, it gets ahead of you,
Mm-hmm.
it really does. And then the lows, it's, God knows you wish that you could be more even when the lows come around. So I hear you, man.
Yeah. No, I think in the grand scheme of things, like at some point, and I think this isn't everyone's story, but this is why I appreciate you being here today, because there's more
Yeah.
people that can relate to what you're talking about than that can't, right?
Agreed.
It's crazy relatable.
Mm-hmm.
What you're dealing with right now is crazy relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the willingness to be vulnerable about it, I think is gonna connect with so many folks because they're gonna realize they're not alone.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of pressure around this conversation. People are like, oh, in people's families or friends, like, oh, so-and-so went to rehab. Now he's back doing whatever. And there's a judgment around that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, that may be true, but they still have the awareness that like, man, maybe this isn't for me. Recovery takes patience. That's what I've learned. And that's what I've had to build the most of. And patience sucks to build.
Right.
The only way to build patience is to sit in
Is
it.
to be patient.
Yeah. There's no other way.
Yeah.
And God forbid
Yeah.
you pray for patience,
Right.
because God's going to give you opportunities to be patient and you're going to hate it. But for me, it's about killing that ego, man. And just being like, giving my glory to God. Say, God, thank you for giving me this opportunity to straighten my life out, because I've lost friends in this. I lost my dad to this.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone makes it out. And so I give it to him, or I'll give the glory to my mom, or someone else that's been a part of my journey, because I didn't get sober alone.
Mm-hmm.
I had a community of people show up for me in different
Right.
ways. And so, and I still do. Right. And so I think that while sometimes it feels good to give yourself your own accolades and say, great job, I'm proud of me. At the same time, I got to be careful with that, if that makes sense, and just try to keep it mid-grade.
Trip. It makes perfect sense. Especially fighting the ego. It's funny, man, because a lot of times, back to the crutch, and I don't think I mentioned this to you on Thanksgiving. And I told you when coming in here and out in the room that I would be open and honest. I'm not going to hold back on anything. So you can ask me anything, but what I'm about to say is, could seemingly be pretty heavy, but, and I'll preface this by saying that I'm not like wanting people to feel sorry for me because Chad Womack's depressed. Like it's life and whatever. What makes it worse, and what I think is the crutch, is that, and I'm not a victim, I'm fighting back, is for in my life, I feel like everything is, for me, before I say what I'm about to say, is for me, is perfect. There's plenty of people that have much more than me. For me, and what I've wanted in my life since being as young as I can remember, on paper, it's absolutely perfect. But it compounds the amount of and the severity of depression that I have. And it compounds the times that I'm saying to myself, man, can you not go one weekend without drinking this weekend? And it's because it's like, man, you've done this. And I do say this humbly, actually, probably not humbly. I did it on my own. I did. I had to fight for everything that I have. And sometimes I look and I'm like, man, why? It just compounds it. It makes everything that much worse. It makes the shame worse. It makes the depression 10 times worse. And sometimes, and to steal your phrase, pardon my French, it is a monster and a motherfucker, man.
Mm-hmm.
There's some days that I wake up that it's just fighting me, and I have to fight back. And sometimes I get tired of fighting back,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I do turn to drinking. I hate to admit this, just to escape. My mind is constantly racing. I'm sure yours is too. and I've had some pretty severe struggles with that, you know, and I'm trying to work through that. But um, to your point, you said something a minute ago. Do I think that this might help people? Absolutely, because much like you, you probably saw my reaction whenever you mentioned about meetings and going into meetings. I, I don't want to be a part of this community. I don't. I've met some of the nicest, most solid, successful people in recovery than anywhere else. And man, just because my drug of choice is alcohol, somebody else is fentanyl, we're the same. We're addicts. You know, I'm a junkie too. Um, but I don't want to be a part of the community, and it keeps me out of meetings. You know, I don't. I'm embarrassed. I am. I'd be the first to tell you if I walked into a meeting tonight and you were to walk in after me and I didn't know, which this has happened before, man. I'll tell you a very, very quick story. I walked in, we were on a outing when I was in rehab. We didn't have our phones and stuff. He knows actually, I can't say who it is. I shouldn't have said, but I saw someone that's very close to our family, and it brought me to tears. Really did. Frankly, I just wanted him to, it was just a very powerful thing, you know, and as much relief it was, but I told him there, you know, I'm like, man, this is, and he was embracing it, and God love him for it. He was like, no, man, we get to do this, man. We're here, we get to change, you know, and that helped me through that night. But yeah, it keeps me out of meetings, man. And I don't want to be long-winded. So it keeps
You're good.
you know, so
Yeah, no, and how that shows up for me, I'm
Yeah,
not speaking
please.
for you at all. But for me, when I would get those feelings, that was like almost an opportunity for me to face my ego.
Okay.
To be like, you know what, I'm really in this moment and where I stand, I'm not all that different than the rest of these people. So maybe
Sure.
this is my community right now. But that was a hard
That's a
thing
good
for me
point.
to swallow, brother.
That's a great point.
That was a hard thing for me to swallow. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I walked into one and walked right back out with this, like, fuck that. Right? That happened. And so, and I share this because people need to know the truth. Like, it's real.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, is people need to know the truth. I was about to share something that I shouldn't either. Nothing, it's
Yeah.
just out of privacy to
Right.
them, but it is. People need to know the truth. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And I got to a point, man. And I think what's interesting about this conversation with you is I genuinely feel like you're already there. And what I mean when I say that, is this. When you get to a point where you don't care who knows your struggles, you're free.
Mhm.
You coming on here today
Mhm.
is that, brother.
Well, you came to Thanksgiving, so I'll do your podcast. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but I appreciate it, man. I have nothing to hide. It's so funny, man. As I tell my wife this sometimes, as insecure as I can be sometimes, I also am arrogant enough to not really care what most people think about me.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. You know, I have some severe insecurities, also have some arrogance. I don't know what it is. And not because I think I have it all. It's because I'm just like, man, this is me. This is just me. And if it will help somebody, you know, I do reach out to people sometimes, and especially when it comes to depression and frankly, not to get too deep, but suicidal thoughts. Um, if I see, I'll just say this, I'll see people post certain things. I'll see some people have reached out to me. I could tell that they're struggling, and that means a lot to me. I said this on another podcast, like, man, I would be there all day long and just say, man, like, if you were ever reach out, like, man, let's just sit for an hour. Like, why don't we just go through this hour? And I said this on Mike's podcast, man, that I've been there. I've been sitting in a room like, I need to make it through this hour.
Mm.
I don't care how that sounds. It sounds like some people are like, there's no way. Yeah, there's a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I need to get through this hour. Okay, I did that. Let's get through this 24 hours. You know, I have people in my life that are depending on me, but I'm being honest and open right now, because if it does help somebody, then I would help them, because I have been there. And I'm also waving my hand like, I'm not sober. Don't call me if you're looking for a sponsor. Don't call me if you're looking for me to tell you you shouldn't drink. I'm drinking right now. You know, I'm drinking right now. I know how bad it sucks sometimes. You know, could I go a week without drinking? Absolutely. You know, for whatever reason, I don't want to right now.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest with that too. So, and I'm fulfilling my commitment to you to just be honest and open, man. So,
Well, I think, but everything you're saying is relatable
yeah, I appreciate it, man.
because anybody who's been in the shit,
yeah,
that's what it feels like.
it's some shit, man.
It is. It's deep.
And why we keep doing it, I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I want to say this real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I tell my daughter this that because I know she'll listen to this regarding alcohol because I've been open and honest with her my entire life or her entire life. In fact, I remember she was real young one time and real young, probably not even know what it meant, but she was like, "Have you ever been in jail?" And I was like, "Yeah." And her eyes get real big, like, "What?" Like, "You've been in jail?" But I tell her regarding alcohol, I'm like, "Look, there's nothing wrong with people that drink. I have the gene that I choose to take it too far. I still feel like a choice. My wife hates it when I say that. I know it's considered a disease by some people. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I tell her, I'm like, you're probably going to drink in your life. There's nothing wrong with it. It can get out of control quickly. I'm just telling you, buddy, it can get out of control quickly. I let it get it out of control. The last thing you wanted to do is to get out of control. Mom drinks socially. Nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, yeah, man, I do. I think that it's real and relatable. I'll leave it at that.
You know, you said something right there about it being, you know, whether it's hereditary, genetic, a choice. I think all those things can be right.
Do you really? I'm glad to hear you say. Yeah, yeah.
Because look, at the end of the day, once this is what I believe, and this might be hard headed, but once you have the awareness that it's a problem, it is a choice, right? You can still say no. I didn't want to admit that. You know, I leaned more on the genetic or the hereditary side at first. I was like, well, I can't help it. Like, it's in my blood.
This is me.
This is how I'm wired. This is what I have to do. But now today, being almost 5 years removed, I do have choice.
Congrats on that, by the way.
Right.
Seriously, congratulations. That's big.
No, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
But I don't even know how it happened. I don't have the answer to sobriety. I don't have the answer to recovery. And anybody who acts like they know how to do it, they're full of shit. Right? It doesn't work like that. What I do know is that the quickest way to help people is through connection and honesty and vulnerability and transparency. Because what we don't want to continue happening is people to battle the same battles that you're talking about, that you're still dealing with alone.
Absolutely.
That's where it goes bad. And that's where a lot of times it ends up in the newspaper, right?
Yes.
That's just the real, and that's why I believe my dad ended up in the newspaper.
Really?
Because he couldn't ask for help. He couldn't talk about it. He couldn't share his truth. And so what that represents to me is almost like this, you know, you said you worked in the oil fields. You know, if you're drilling and you hit high pressure, it ends bad. Right? Well, as people, as that pressure builds, the wrong thing strikes that, it's going to end bad.
Absolutely, man.
And so it's the same kind of concept, but if you have pressure relief systems, right? In the oil fields, like they have ways to get some of the pressure off before they continue certain activities, right? We need that as humans. So that way, when it does get hit, it's not this massive catastrophic explosion that destroys everything around us. It's more like, okay, there's something coming out right now. I know it's not easy to hear. I know it's not fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But that's better than what is going to happen if this continues to build.
Right.
And to me, that's what talking about it does. It just takes off a little bit, just gets rid of a little bit of that pressure so that you can continue to move through the day. But if you try to walk out of here and not tell anybody or not talk about it, like, it's a matter of time, dude.
I agree with that. You know, Brad and I talk very, very openly about, everything, but I think we've become significantly closer just over the past like 5 or 6 years. And ironically, I think the past 5 or 6 years have been the toughest in my personal life. And I don't know what to equate it to. I don't know why. It just has been. He knows a little bit about it. And I'll let him tell his story one day. He's been on 80 podcasts, so he probably has. But yeah, I talked to him very openly about it. It's funny. And I'm not discrediting her for this. In fact, I tell her all the, I'll get to it. My wife, it's hard sometimes to bring it up to my wife for two reasons. A, I'm embarrassed. And B, I don't want to be the issue guy. Like, I don't want to be the guy who's like, oh, I need help today. I don't want to be, you can call it masculinity or whatever. I just don't want to be that guy, because there's still a significant part of me that's like, get your ass up and go to work. Like, not even just like literal work, but whatever that work may be for that day, like, shake it up, man. Like, go. Also, there's another part of me that knows that when someone says, well, just be happy, it's a very ignorant statement, and so it's hard to talk to my wife sometimes because she's impossibly happy, thank God, and impossibly positive. She's an absolute unicorn. And sometimes I can tell, like, yeah, it's wearing her down. I wear myself down, but I do have Brad as an avenue. It's funny, I'm on a podcast now because I haven't been too comfortable talking too much about it, but it's a significant part of my life, man. It really and truly is. And it's frankly, and again, I'm not waving a white flag, but it's a daily battle, and sometimes I'm proud for getting through the week, and sometimes I'm like, God damn, you could do better, so I don't know. It's a daily fight, man.
It is. And I think what people don't realize that aren't in it, and it's a blessing your wife doesn't have the same feelings.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I've had to learn
it's a blessing I married somebody like that, because I mean it.
Well, those people are put around people like us, I think, for a reason.
I hope so. I hope she realizes that and doesn't. I probably will come home, my bags are packed, before she hears this,
No, my stepdad's a lot like that, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'll call him with something and he'll be like, just pray about it. It's fine.
Really?
Everything's good. You'll be
a little
good.
Buddha in your own house.
Cheer up. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that don't work.
Yeah.
People will be like, write you're happy on paper 700 times and you'll be happy. I'm like, I could write it 10,000 times. It doesn't work that way for me.
Yeah.
And so I get it. I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. What's interesting is I had this misconception of, when I got sober, I'd no longer deal with mental health shit. That's not true.
Yeah.
And I hate to break that news to people that are hoping that that's true. It gets better, but I think it only gets better because you can manage it easier. The easiest thing for me to turn to still to this day is if I'm struggling with depression or I'm really anxious, I know in the back of my mind how to handle it.
How?
Like right now, like I'd go drink.
Oh, gotcha.
It'll curb it right now. The problem is whatever I'm feeling from a depression or anxiety state in that moment will be 10x by the time I stop. Because at some point you got to put it down. At some point you got to face it, right? And usually through my own actions, when I'm drinking or I'm using, I'm just making the problem worse.
Right.
I'm compounding everything, whether that's financial, the people I'm involved with, the places I go.
Yeah.
At some point you got to face the music. And usually by the time you face the music, whatever you were initially anxious or depressed about is micro on the scale to what you've created by doing all these things.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try to remind myself of that. When I'm feeling depressed or anxious now, I'm like, yes, I am. But in comparison, it's nowhere near what I felt in the past.
Do you feel that often? If you don't mind me asking, depressed and anxious
yeah, I think I feel everything now. Right. I think that's something else
that's a good point.
They don't talk about. Like,
that's a really good point.
When you're spending 50% of your time under the influence, you're really only feeling 50% of what's real. Because when you're drinking or doing drugs, a lot of times what's being chemically released in your body, different hormones that make you feel happy.
Yeah.
But that's not reality, because even in those moments, there's things that aren't good, right? But in your mind, you're like, it's not that big of a deal because I'm having a good time. So once you strip that away, now another 50% of your life, you're having to face the real.
Right.
And it's all the feelings, man. So yeah, I still have depressive thoughts. I still have anxious thoughts. I still have moments where I question my own sanity, right? Like that's just real shit. And
yeah.
And that's hard, right? Because you don't want to feel like the crazy son of a bitch, you know?
Man, that's so funny you said that because it's, I look around, yes, yes. No, I don't want to feel that
Yeah.
way. And I do. I question it all day, every day. It's, you know, I, people cringe when I say this. I married my literal soulmate. I really did. Like, I, anyway, really and truly did. I have the most perfect daughter on earth. I have brothers that are literally my heroes, seriously, and we're tighter than we've ever been. That I have people that I can look up to. I'm surrounded by friends that, would literally take or go to bat for you in every sense of the word. And they're fun and they're good and they're solid people, good fathers or good mothers or whatever it may be, things that matter to me at this stage of my life, and I say it humbly, our bills are paid. We don't have financial issues right now. Um, but, and yeah, and I still catch myself looking around. I'm like, I must be, not am I, but I must be the crazy son of a bitch because why do I find any type of negativity when I am immersed and drowning in positivity?
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy, man. And so, yeah, I hate saying this because I don't want this to be, I've used the word crutch a lot, but I don't want to use this as an excuse. I do find myself drinking sometimes to either silence my mind or just give some type of relief from whatever, I don't know, man, anxiety or worry I have that day. Cause I just have this feeling that it's all going to be taken away. It's like my entire life that I have is going to be taken away. So I know what you mean. And that feeling of wondering or not wondering, thinking that you are in fact the crazy in the group, man, it gets so old sometimes. And when it starts getting old, it compounds and you can't stop thinking about it. So it's wild how our minds work,
Yeah. And I'll give you
It's wild.
a crazy reverse reflection on
Yeah,
that.
please.
When I got back to Austin, no money. I was paying rent on credit cards, bro. It was not good.
I understand.
No vehicle. My engine had blown up in my truck. Like, it was ugly. I was walking Tex, my dog, on South Lamar one night, and the sun was setting. And I don't know what the hell it was, bro. I mean, I didn't have nothing. This smile came over me. This like feeling of warmth and happiness and joy. Like, I wouldn't even call it happiness. I call it joy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have shit. And so in that moment, I realized it's not about what you have and what's around you. It's about what's in you.
Yeah.
And so, but that crazy feeling you're talking about, dude, I still get it. Like, I have a dream life right now. I've met someone in my life who I consider to be, my potential future.
That's awesome.
I have successful businesses, right? On some level, to my own level of success, what I would want them to be. I have great friends around me. I have the opportunity to be of service and go speak and fulfill my purpose. But there are days where I'm still like, man, why? What's the point of all this shit?
Really?
I don't care.
Yeah.
That's the real. And it's all there,
Yeah.
right? I have everything I could ever dream of.
Right.
But I think part of it too, what I try to remember is, if I feel that way, man, there's something else in me that needs to be worked through. And that's where I go back to the drawing board. But at some point, dude, to keep it real, I had this conversation the other day with this person that's came into my life I'm telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
Growth gets old, bro. I'm tired. I'm tired of growing. People will be like, what? That's just the real. I'm tired of having to face this shit. I'm tired of having to continually find more things to work on. Like, when is it going to be just good? Right? And what I'm finding is the way that I'm wired, man, that need to continually grow probably isn't ever going to go anywhere.
I'm laughing and I have that reaction because I've said that very recently is I'm tired of growing.
Yeah.
Like I'm tired of there's 10 steps I have to do every single morning or when I wake up, just to search for contentment. And what I'm saying sounds pitiful because I realize what I have. It's funny, man. I told my wife this, I've told her this twice since this happened, but every day we go out, this is when I was driving my daughter to school and whatever. And I noticed this one day. My wife was telling us bye and or goodbye or whatever, and she has this just this look of pure joy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like pure joy. She's in a robe, like she's telling us bye. We've eaten whatever, and it's obviously stuck with me until then. And I've told her this since then. But that's like that's happiness. Like that's love. Like that's and not to get too deep.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I want. Like, that's like, she just loves her family so much, and I do too. I do too. And I feel it on deep levels, but I want that. Like, you should have seen her face, man. Like, it's just this love and this joy, and that's what I would love to continue to fight for. So if I have to fight for growth for that,
Mm-hmm.
just the realization, like, it just be here now. Like, be here now. Like, be like, the ability to give and receive love
Mm-hmm.
on a genuine level is all I'm after. And I'll work on growth for that, especially for those two,
Yeah.
for my wife and I, because they've given so much to me. But I know what you mean. Yeah, I told her, I'm like, do I have to meditate? Do I have to read a passage in a book? Do I have to sit in the sauna? Do I have to cold plunge? Do I have to run 8 miles and carve a toothpick out of an oak tree like Brad does? Do I have to do that just for contentment? Well, yeah, growth gets tiring. But I will say, and I'll end on this. If it is, for now, I'll commit to that for them to have that look of joy on my face when they're leaving to just go to school. You follow me?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's I guess that's my purpose. I don't know.
Something that's helped me, and maybe this will be useful for you, because there's so much people throw at you in order to become content.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the list is a mile long.
And it's crazy.
And you could do all of it some days and it doesn't relieve you.
Yeah.
And that's disheartening. The one thing that's really helped me, and I'm so glad you brought this up because I'd honestly forgot about it.
Yeah.
And I need to go do it when I go home. From what I remember from Brad's story, your guys' dad left when you were 4. Is that right?
Probably around 4. Yeah. Our younger brother was just born from memory. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so.
I was 5.
Yeah.
Therapist told me to find a picture from that age. So I dug and there's a picture of me. It's my kindergarten picture.
You're gonna pull it up?
Hair's just jacked up.
Yeah,
You know
awesome,
what I mean?
man.
I had like a star on my chest.
From field day?
Yeah.
Remember the old
Yeah.
school field? Yeah,
Yeah.
I got you.
And he said, I want you to pull that picture up. He's like, hey, set it as your wallpaper on your phone, print it out, put it on your mirror, whatever you need to do. But when you're struggling, look at that kid and ask yourself truthfully, like, are you proud, even with your flaws and your shortcomings and everything that's been wrong, are you proud of what you've done with your life? And the answer to that is yes.
I would hope so.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Same for you, bro. Knowing where it started.
Yeah. Thank you. And I am.
Yeah.
I am. And I appreciate that, man. That's a really profound statement. I am. And thank you.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Because where people like us struggle, and I don't want to group us together, but
No,
I don't think
please,
we're
man.
all that different. I don't think any of us are all that different when it comes to this. When you're in this pattern of growth, whether it's building business, fitness, relationships, faith, it doesn't matter. We're so quick when you're hot, like when you're intelligent and you're able to build success, we're so quick to compare an hour ago to right now or a minute ago to right now.
Yeah.
We get caught up in that. How did I grow right now? What am I doing right now? How am I getting better right now? Sometimes you got to stop that train and say, damn, how did I get better over the last year? What have I gotten through?
Right.
What have I gotten through in the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years? Because then you're able to get back to the moment in the present and be like, in all of those times, I was having struggles, because you're going to have them. But I want to be able to look back in 5 years and know that I got through them.
Right.
Just like I just did a minute ago. And the only way to do that is to continue forward.
Right.
And we get stronger, not so life gets easier, it's so we can take on more. And unfortunately, that's the life we prayed for. Like a lot of the things that we feel and that frustrate us, we were on our knees for 20 years ago.
Damn right.
So the problems that we have, we asked for them, right? We're not worried about putting food on the table. We're not worried about what's the next meal. you know, or like I'm sure you're not worried about if your wife and your daughter's going to be okay. They're going to be okay. You're going to take care of them. But maybe 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. Right. So now it's more like the problems that we're facing or we're dealing with is directly aligned with the gifts we've been given. Right. Like big business problems. You think about these top level, high level CEOs, the stress that they're under. Well, they asked for that, man. You know, and I have to remind myself of that. Like everything I feel right now, I asked for.
I appreciate you saying that because you're right. You're right. Yeah. 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 I don't know where we are on time. I really appreciate all of this. You've said some really powerful things, you know, and what you just said about asking for it, you're damn right. Dylan and my wife always says, you know, thank God you have these problems,
Yeah.
you know, if whatever that may be, you know, thank God you have these problems. And just like you said, we asked for them. That's really powerful, man. To be honest, it makes you think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we got a little bit of time left.
Some of them, I just want to be like, I didn't ask for that.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I'm the same way.
You know, like, I don't know if you misinterpreted me, but maybe I was drunk and I was slurring, but I didn't ask for this one. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, I can definitely relate to that.
I hear you, man.
If you don't mind me asking,
Ask anything.
and this isn't just for me, this is for the audience and people that are already connected in this episode.
Please.
Your drinking specifically, how does it start and what does it look like?
Yeah, man. You know, and again, you can ask me anything. I feel like I'm a social drinker. There's nothing that I like more than going out with my wife and having wine, having drinks at dinner, and that's it. What I would do is it got to the point that I would come back home. I'd knock out another 9 beers when she went to bed. You know, there was a time that I'd put Dylan and Skylar to bed or they'd go to bed and I'd go upstairs when we had whatever and knock out a 9-pack of pints, Miller Lite pints. I'd still get up at 5 the next day. I'm at work. But you and I both know you may be physically present. You're operating at 15% max. I mean, max, you know? So what that looked like, and I'll be as honest as I can be, you know, it got to the point my wife, I mean, everybody notices, everybody. And it gets to the point that I started hiding drinks because in my mind, I don't want to bother my wife. I mean, there've been times, Trip, that we've been sitting in the living room watching TV. I'll get up and like, I'm going to the restroom or whatever, and I'll knock back half a bottle of wine real quick and throw it back in the utility room refrigerator. There've been times that I've hid bottles of vodka in our garage. And it sneaks up on me because at the time I'm just like, well, I just don't want her to be frustrated with me. I've got this under control. Severe manipulation, severe betrayal, out and out lying. Yeah, I remember one time I thought I was being slick and I'd been drinking. I'd drink water nonstop. I just always have. I had a cup there, but it was vodka water. And my wife, I think I'd slurred something. She was like, did you just, and then my daughter said, hey, can I have a sip of water? It's like, buddy, that's not water. So that's what it looks like. And it ramps up and it ramps up and it ramps up. And then it just turns into this cycle. One thing I will say, and all addicts say this, I could stop if I know. I feel like I could stop if I wanted to. I could go a stretch. In fact, that's my plan coming up, but whatever. But on the same note, man, it's changing your lifestyle and everything else, and it scares me. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's what it leads to is that when I checked into I went to Sage Recovery, which I can't recommend it enough for people that are looking for a place to go. And I'll tell you why I say that. They focus heavily on the mental health aspect. I was in a very dark place, and I'll just say this: I came close to losing my life, and checked in the next day, and I called the next day and checked in shortly after, for the mental health aspect of it. So that's what it looks like. It's an escape. It ramps up. I don't have limits. I'm not a fighter. I don't yell. I'm not all of that. I'm not sloppy. I know when to leave a place. But I just don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come home and knock out another 9-pack or another 2 bottles of wine. Still get up the next day, still go to work. Bills, I think everything's fine. It's not. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I appreciate your vulnerability there.
Sure, man.
And just to keep it all the way real, it sounds a lot like me.
Oh, really? Yeah.
A lot like my experience.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have that same experience.
Really?
What I'll say is this, man. I heard you say something in there, and I'm not full of wisdom at all.
I'll take it.
So please don't. I'm never trying to tell people what to do or how to live ever.
No, man, please.
So I'll share something with you that this old timer shared with me. I had a very similar conversation with him. I was like, man, I'm afraid if I stop drinking and I have to change everything about myself, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to be miserable? Like, I can't have fun. I can't go to events. I can't, whatever. And he's like, you're thinking of it. He told me, he's like, and it was blunt and to the point. And honestly, it pissed me off, but I'm glad he said it to me. He's like, you're thinking of it wrong, Trip. He said, you're thinking of it is if I give up this one thing, I lose everything. He's like, that's not the truth. He's like, the truth is you give up that one thing, you gain everything. And I was like, it's held true, bro.
Really?
It's held completely true. I can go to these same weddings, concerts. I love concerts, man. I love jamming out and having a good time. And like, am I as free, like from a dance perspective or whatever, crazy perspective? No.
Yeah.
That's just the real. But I can be there. I can enjoy it. I can remember it. I can be a part of it that's like functioning. And so, I've gained a better relationship with my mom. I have the ability to have people in my life now that love me for the right reasons. I gave up that one thing and it was almost like life gave me everything else I could ever dream of.
Right.
That doesn't mean that the mental health struggles still aren't there.
Right. Yeah.
Because they are.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, my fear was always associated with that, especially being single. How am I going to meet my wife, man? I can't go on a date and have a drink.
Yeah.
Like I can't. And plus part of it was like, well, what if my wife, like, what if she drinks socially? I can't partake in that, right? Like she's going to think, oh, my husband he can't do that because he has a problem. Like, I don't want to bring her shame and embarrassment. And I had to let go of all that shit, dude.
Right.
And it sounds like, just from what I've seen and what I'm hearing from you, like, bro, your support system is locked in.
They're amazing.
They're next level, sounds like. And so I don't think there's anything that you can do by stopping at whatever point, if you ever decide that's what you want to do, that would bring them shame, right? I think it would bring them enjoyment and pride.
It would.
But again, it ain't, and this is hard for a lot of people to hear too, it really ain't about them either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's about us, and it's hard.
It's hard, man. Thank you so much. And they are, they're just amazing people. I know I'm weak and I'm scared, to go down that path. Frankly, it's something that I've had in the back of my mind forever. And to not draw this out, like nobody deserves that more than Dylan and Skylar. I mean, nobody, and me.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Yeah.
I really do. Because they are great, and I don't know why I've held on to, whatever I'm holding on to. It's fear. It's whatever that may be. Because I don't have anything to prove to anybody,
Right.
So I do have stuff to prove to myself as far as could you stop, like. And I can, like right now, I literally could look you in the face and say, yeah, I won't drink for a month, and I wouldn't drink for a month. But on the same note, I just don't like, even me admitting out loud the times I was hiding liquor or taking drinks when my wife didn't know or whatever. Like, man, that's such an act of betrayal to my wife. Like, my God, she deserves so much more. I mean, she deserves so much more, and And she's been through all of the deals, the agreements, the okay, just so and so, or well, or meaning we'll just go to so and so's house just tonight. I'll just drink tonight, so I'm not standing out. But I don't know, man. It's something that I've been deeply considering. I can't say you can even hear me stuttering now because it's hard for me to say out loud. Okay, I won't drink in 2025 because I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of breaking those promises. So it's something to consider, though, man.
Yeah, and I think again,
Yeah,
there's never going to be judgment from me on it.
I know,
It's
and I
always
appreciate
love.
it.
It's always love
Yeah.
because everything you're saying,
Thank you.
I get it.
Yeah,
Like it is crystal clear
yeah, man.
because I've felt it, I've said it,
Yeah,
and I understand it. And I think a lot of people, more than people will ever admit, have felt that same thing
yeah,
and understand that same thing. I think there's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves to say, like, even myself, I'm never drinking again. That's still hard for me to say.
yeah.
Like, what? Like, that doesn't even click right in my head.
Right.
All I say, and another old dude told me that old dudes, I think, saved my life, bro.
I need to start hanging around old dudes.
Dude, old dudes are
I'm
crazy.
52, so I'm
Yeah.
kind of there. I'm like getting up into
Oh
that.
no, I'm
like,
talking like 80s, bro.
Oh,
These
oh,
guys,
yeah.
they're just like
we're going for the 80s.
yeah, they're on a cane and they're just like, they'll say some shit and you're like,
Yeah,
he probably knows what he's talking about.
yeah,
But it was this concept of like this old guy, man, he was all pissed off. You know, they're like crotchety. They're always like angry.
It takes 80 to get to that point because I'm like crotchety and angry
Yeah,
right now.
me
and
too.
Okay,
Yeah.
get it.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, overachievers once again. you
For
know?
sure.
Just-
Yeah, we got to get there sooner.
Yes.
But this guy, someone and said something, and you're not, the people that aren't involved in 12-step, like a lot of these meetings, there's no crosstalk allowed. Like, meaning like if you share something,
Yeah,
I can't come back
yeah,
and tell
yeah.
you something.
Yeah, right.
Old motherfuckers don't care. So like,
They've earned that.
yeah.
They've earned it.
So somebody had said something like I just said, like, I can't imagine or fathom, saying I'm never going to drink again. And this like old dude chimed in completely out of turn. And it was more or less, he's like, well, that's just dumb shit anyways. He's like, why don't you just not fucking drink today?
Wow. Yeah.
And left it at that. And everyone in the room was like, oh yeah. Like what am I tripping about 2025?
No kidding.
What about just today?
Just today.
And he's like, it sounds so silly, but it was profound. He's like, when you wake up tomorrow, ask yourself the question.
Mhm.
He's like visibly go in the mirror and say, do I want to drink today? Do I need to drink today? He's like, I promise you, if you do that every day, you're going to look back in that mirror and say, you know what? I don't think I want to or need to today. And he's like, you just do that. He's like, stop tripping about all this long-term shit.
Mhm.
I didn't get to where I'm at by where there was no way. There became a point, you don't count days anymore. That's the real. You just stop counting days. You just do it today.
You know what's funny about that? You mentioned Kokoro, what Brad did at the beginning of this. And I'm fascinated with that event. And I'm fascinated that my twin brother with identical DNA did that. But I was watching shows over that, and I even read a book by a guy who did it. And I think it was Mark Devine, the person who started all this, Navy SEAL, whatever. And in fact, I know it is or was on one of his podcasts. He said the people that make it have the ability to think small, and he was talking about in all of these, super uber emergency situations that you're literally in fight or flight, but. And he said that he's like, and what he means is like, just get through, like they would do wave torture or surf torture. It's called in the Pacific, it's like 35 degrees outside. So whatever the ocean is, the ability to think small. Let me just get through this one wave. Let me just get through this second wave. Let me get through this log carry evolution. Let me get through this Murph evolution. The ability to think small. So it equates to that or relates to that is getting through that day. It's funny, man. I just saw your tattoo. Do you mind if I share a story real fast?
Yeah, go,
I'll make it
please.
quick. Back to where my drinking got me. So I see your Iron Man tattoo. I had signed up. I was training. I knocked out the half Ironman in Waco. Don't ask me my time. It was right up there with the Turtles. But I did that. Loved it. Loved the competition. Did a couple of smaller ones. I signed up for Tempe full Ironman. You know what it takes to train. That's why I'm telling you this. You know what it takes to train. Um, Everybody was emotionally invested in me. Everybody. My business partner's calling me. Brad is my business partner, obviously. My family checking in on me. I had people that are family friends tracking me on the app. I drive out there to Tempe, Arizona. I'm alone. I got there 3 nights before, spent the first 2 nights getting hammered, drinking. Not even realizing it really, just like I'm going to have a drink with dinner. And, for me, at least, that it just, whatever, because I'm alone, I'm going to be fine. I'll just be okay the night before. Still had 2 drinks the night before. Get up early, knock out the swim. And I will say, in my defense, I think I had COVID at the time. Honestly, I even ran into my coach going to the swim corral, and she was like, "Oh my God, you sound terrible." I was like, "Yeah, I was up all night coughing and stuff. I think I'm sick, but I'm just going to go for it." Knocked out the swim, knocked out the bike, about to start the run and trip. I'm sitting in the changing tent, and I'm like, if I start this, I'm not going to get home in time to be able to go out to the bars and drink. If I do this, if I start the run, because I'm not going to quit if I start, and started making, I quit that race, and I'm sure that is so I could go out and drink that night, which I didn't because I was too sick. I literally laid on my bed and I literally was just wiped out. But that's always resonated with me, and I'm like, all of the people invested in you, emotionally invested in you, all of the training, all of this stuff that you wanted that title of Iron Man, yet you went home with the title of drunk,
Mm-hmm.
And about a month before that, I had the same thing, done a trail run alone, and dude, I got hammered the night before. Still woke up and ran the race. I don't know if my wife knows about this one. She does now. Still woke up and ran the race. And but the Ironman, that was the big one for me. It's just like you spent all this money, spent all this time, and more importantly, you had everybody invested in you. Everybody. And you had to go back and look them in the face and like, yeah, I bonked on the run. You didn't bonk on the run. You're lying. You're lying. You stopped because you're an addict and an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Is exactly why you stopped that race. So, but yeah, I saw your tattoo, and again, in full transparency, and for the sake of not wanting to be a fraud, that's where my drinking led. That's exactly where my drinking got me, man.
Well, that's real, because I can't think of how many times in my life, same story.
Oh, really?
Same story. Bruh. And it was almost like, when I look back at it now, it was almost like, I think for me, and everyone's experience is different. I think for me, it was a worthiness thing. Like, am I really worthy to do this big shit? Like, let me fuck it up.
100%.
Let me fuck it up. Like, I had an opportunity, I'll tell you, like, dude, I had this opportunity to put on a training session. I was 26 years old, man. And I was on a career path to be the youngest to do whatever in this company, like every time. And I had an opportunity to put on a training session for all the superintendents, general superintendents, foremen for this company. And I was growing in that career path, and I'd had my A game on, man. I'd been doing well. And I flew in to Miami because I was working out of town at the time. I fly into Miami, which is where my house was at, Fort Lauderdale. And I was like, man, I'm just going to, night before, I'm going to have a couple drinks, see the guys. Training started the next morning at 7 a.m. And I've never shared this story outside of my stepdad and my mom. Partied all night long, right? To the point where I'm like in the shower the next morning, hadn't went to sleep, got to go do this training. My mind's a million places. I'm still tore out the frame.
Cocaine still, if you don't mind me asking?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
And I'm all the way sent.
Okay.
So I can't drive to do the speech that this training that I've put together for months, that I'd worked my ass off on. And it was such a massive opportunity for me to grow in the company, all these things. So I take an Uber there. I stop in the Uber at this gas station right by the training facility. I walk in. I'm like, all right, I need some coffee or something. Like, I gotta snap out of this, man. And I got there and I got to the front doors, and I made up an excuse that like there was a family emergency. I needed to leave right away. And everyone was like, what's going on? You freak. You could tell. Like they knew something was up.
People can always tell, can't they?
Yep. And I got the hell out of there. And you know what's sad about that? I went back home, and instead of facing the music, the first thing I did was start drinking and using again because I couldn't. I was like, I can't believe that just happened. And I went for 3 days after that.
Did you? Yeah.
And so I can't tell you how relatable that is for me too, of like these moments that should have been so incredible for not just me, but the people that love me, that I just completely imploded on.
That's the worst. And like I literally, I can feel how I felt physically in the change, and I could have knocked out the run. And again, it's such an act of betrayal, man. You know, like how blessed are we to have like the woman that you have in your life right now, the people that I have in my life right now, wife, daughter, brothers, and friends. There's some friends that I love. I don't use that word
Lightly.
No, I don't. I really don't. I just don't, whatever. It's just such an act of betrayal. And, you know, and I'm calling us both out.
Yeah.
Like it's such an act of betrayal when, you know, even, I mean, so many facets of betrayal. The amount of money that I spent on gear and training and travel and all of this, like it's our family money, you know, it's all of these things. And, you know, it for alcohol to have won that day. And again, I don't think I've told anybody this except Brad, Jason, and Dylan. Yeah, now that I think about it, you know, or my coach just heard me, the coach that I hired at the time, Natasha, who's an amazing person. She's going to be like, you son of a bitch. Yeah. It's just an act of betrayal. And I think if there's anything that I need, that I will get right, I'm not even going to say, I think it's Yoda who says there's no try, there's just do. Or Buddha, you know, same thing, I think. But if there's one thing that I am going to get, that I'm steadfast on and hell-bent on, is I'm goddamn going to show my wife and daughter that I love and them, and that I'm committed to them, and that all of that bullshit's over. That I'm just not going to lie. I'm not going to be deceitful. Whether or not that means I'm going to be 100% sober, I don't know, but I won't pull any of that stuff anymore. Pardon my language. I shouldn't have said that. It just,
it's your passion.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. That's what's coming.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I hope so. Like it's easy to say, you know, but they deserve it. That is my passion, and I do know that for a fact. So I'll leave it at that, man. It's I appreciate you sharing your story, because now I'm like, man, thank God it's not just me. But that was a big one, man. I think that I should have just answered your question about where my drinking led me with that story, because that sums up a lot of deceit.
Yeah.
And fraud.
Yeah.
Which that's the main thing I don't want to be, is a fraud, you know? So
yeah, no, that it led me to the same place.
I hear you.
I was that.
Yeah.
I was a fraud.
Interesting, man.
You know, I tell this part of the story too. There was like the same. So within a 2-week period, bro, I was selected as like one of the employees of the year for this company with 4,000 employees. 2 weeks later, there was a letter that went to HR that was like 7 pages long, talking about my drinking. There's probably some drug use. There's some mental health issues. And it was from my peer, my best friend at the time. He was just done. The vice president messed up and accidentally forwarded me that email. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, am I employee of the year or am I this email? And I was so deep in it at the time, I was like, clearly I'm the employee of the year. The truth, looking back, that was all fraudulent, right? That was part-time trip. Full-time trip was everything that was in that letter to HR. And step one for me was just owning that and biting that off and being like, this is who I am. This is what I've become. Is this who I want to be? And for me, it was like, I can't fucking be that letter anymore. I keep the letter. I still read it, bro. It's in my inbox. It's flagged. It's pinned. And you know, that's my reminder. When it's like, okay, if I take, for me and people that I believe are intelligent or high achievers, it only takes one small step to set off a chain of events that are never ending. It takes one, right? And people laugh at that and be like, you can't control your drinking. Sure, that's great. I own that all day long. But it takes one, and one leads to two, two leads to 20, and next thing I know, it's next Thursday. Right. That's just me, and that's okay. So I just don't do one.
Yeah.
That's where it's at. But man, I'm supremely grateful for you coming on today and just being honest and vulnerable and real, because that's what's going to help people. That's what's going to connect with the most people. And that's what the world needs more of. Enough of the fake shit, right?
Absolutely.
Enough of it. And what you did today is the opposite of fraudulent.
I appreciate it.
Know that.
Yeah. And I appreciate the invite and the honest conversation. And frankly, I appreciate who you are as a person and a man. And everything that was discussed today, it's not only a relief, but I'm grateful for it, man. I appreciate you, Trip. Thank you.
100%, man. And we'll have more conversations for sure.
Over Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Or at least some of the food?
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you.
All right, man. Well, that's going to wrap it for today's episode of the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. We appreciate y'all for following along. If you have any questions or follow up on it, hit us in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. You guys have a great day.